Hello and welcome to Power Ballads. Today, my featured guest is Lars Minns, the Chief Human Resources Officer of Mercedes-Benz North America. I mean, I feel pretty special today having you as my guest. And thank you so much. I can't wait for my listeners to get to know you better. But I always appreciate getting to spend time with you and also getting to learn more about you as well.
Right.
Now, we know each other from Leadership Atlanta, but that's just been from a couple of years ago. So do you mind if we started off with you just telling a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Absolutely. So Missy, first of all, big thanks as well. It's always a pleasure. I think you have the gift, not the knack, the gift for lightening up, any room, and obviously in this virtual space, I think the same holds true. So it's a pleasure to spend time on a gloomy Friday with you outside. So I'm Lars Minns. Outside of my professional life, I have the luxury, frankly, of being married to who is my soulmate, Moya Minns, of 22 years. And it's so interesting how fast that time goes by, not counting the time before marriage. So if I counted the time before marriage, we're talking 27 years. We have three beautiful kids who are everything to me. And frankly, right now, I call them my personal development tool because I'm going through a bit of personal development as they develop. And as I'm learning now, I have to develop, but I love them dearly. I love my entire family. I grew up in Nassau, Bahamas. I've been in the U.S. now since 1995. I went to university in Virginia, at Hampton University. Moved to DC, spent 7 years there, and then eventually moved to Atlanta in 2004. So it's been 20 years since I've been in Atlanta. So I've been in Atlanta. I've been in the U.S. longer than I've lived in the Bahamas, and I've almost been in Atlanta longer than I've lived anywhere else.
Wow.
It's quite fascinating how that shapes up. Doesn't mean I'm a true Atlantan, but I think by virtue of my kids being born here, I am. I do have the distinct honor of working for one of the world's most iconic brands, which I am always grateful for. Despite all the challenges that I face, helping this company achieve its goals, I think it's just remarkable to be able to be associated anyway with this amazing brand, with amazing people, amazing dealer partners, you name it. I have the esteemed benefit and pleasure of also leading an HR organization. You're one of 4 divisions for Mercedes-Benz AG in North America. Ours is marketing and sales, and we have the unique challenge to take a beautiful product that people certainly love, and ensuring that we get it to market, but by all means creating these beautiful stories that people want to be a part of. So it's been tremendous. I've been with the company now 9 years. 9 years at the end of this month. I worked for the Home Depot prior to that, which is another incredible company. But just truly grateful for the opportunity to be able to represent this company and do the work of HR, which I think the work of people, with people, for people, in the name of great businesses and enterprises, I think is perhaps some of the most fascinating work. And it is always changing. So in a nutshell, that is me.
Yes. Awesome. All right. I definitely want to dig into the role in HR. I love how you describe that. And obviously lots changing and emerging. But first, let's talk about, I think 20 years in Atlanta makes you an Atlantan.
I hope so,
I'm coming up on this summer, it'll be 25 years.
Wow, okay.
And I had that same sort of realization that this is the longest I've lived anywhere, even my hometown growing up. And the same thing that's wild too, when I stop to think about my husband, thinking that he is, I've known him more than half my life. And that's just,
right.
Wow. Okay. That's a good thing. I don't know how he feels about it. but it's definitely been beneficial for me.
Well, I'll tell you, I do believe that when your wife endorses something, the husband, not that we are required to endorse it, but it makes good sense. It's just good. It's good. It's a good best practice to endorse that which your wife has endorsed.
Thank you. Yes. And this is why you are so good with people too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I have found the numerous times that I am doing training for managers, how often the principles of good managers also underlie the principles of a good marriage.
No doubt about it. No doubt. I will tell you that I've never heard the saying, I'm well husband, but I have heard the saying, I'm well wifed. So you're exactly right,
Exactly. There are some skills when I talk about, done some trainings around like negotiating skills or dealing with, difficult situations, challenging situations. Like these are also very good strategies to use with your children, especially preteen, teenage years. Just multifaceted, multifunctional kinds of skills there.
You want to talk about unique human beings. I mean, a teenager living in their parents' homes, on the edge of exiting their parents' homes. I mean, you cannot get a more unique creature on the planet. So.
Exactly. Well, now remind me again how old your 3 children are.
Sure. Yeah, 18, which is why I mentioned that. I referenced one being on the edge. She'll go to college in the fall. And then 2 boys, 16 and 14. And they're all trying to keep pace. They would love to be out of the home, I can tell you, which I have my days where I go, what, that's actually not a bad pursuit. At the same time, though, we also know when they're ready. We certainly uniquely know when they're ready.
Absolutely. Well, here, let me say something that I think both of my children were also at that, like, ooh, can't wait for independence. Each had a couple of years of independence. Both are back home.
Oh, yeah. I can see that. I can see that.
It is actually what I like. I like to, groan and complain, but I'm really it's not true because I love having them here. It's, my husband and I, we're boring middle-aged, people. Yeah. These 2 liven things up. So
absolutely. Yeah.
You get the benefit of like their, interesting conversations and energy, but they're fully grown. So you don't have to like worry about making decisions for them or, what they're going to eat, what they're going to wear.
They're totally like a good marinade.
Exactly. Yep. So it is good. It is good. All right. So, well, let's talk a little bit about your career area. I remember you and I met one-on-one. Gosh, it's probably been a year, at least a little bit more than a year, just as I was starting to go out on my own. And I'd love to, if you would share about kind of your journey and how you got into kind of a talent and people-oriented field. What drew you to that?
Great question. So I always had aspirations of being in finance. I mean, I knew business would eventually be the destination for me. I had the pleasure of watching my grandfather be this awesome entrepreneur where he owned a restaurant for 60 years and just did it really well. And this was in the Bahamas. And his restaurant, everyone knows, everyone. And that's saying something, it's like any classic restaurant that everyone knows, it's usually because of the quality and because of the nature of the owner. Yeah. Having said that, finance didn't exactly work out. In fact, I often in my mind, the cartoon in my mind is it's not finance, it's finance. It tells you there's something to it. It is not as straightforward as people realize. All that said, I've always enjoyed people. I do get a special energy when it comes to being around people, getting to know people. I'm highly curious about the backgrounds of people because I think it's so fascinating. And I think as the world speeds up, we're seeing that more and more. And so HR became a great place for me. I could not imagine working in finance given how distant at times that profession seems to be for people. So don't get me wrong, I definitely am sure there are intersections as it relates to people. But HR was perfect. I loved the idea of talent because as time has gone on, I mean, it becomes a great equalizer or the great separator. When it comes to your competitor or leading an industry, starting an industry, whatever it is. I mean, however you want to emerge, it's usually because of very talented people. So trying to find the right mix, trying to adjust your model given some of the constraints, wildly fascinated about that. There are other aspects of HR that I'm uniquely fascinated by, the world of compensation, trying to keep someone paid at a competitive wage in line with some of the inflationary pressures that we all experience on a day-to-day basis, to help reward them for meaningful work and the value and contribution they provide. I also like just some of the complexities of what the marketplace, how much that bestows or creates for the average employee. I think that's very interesting. So I just love that. I think what's interesting is it is so easy to get lost in the core structural components of a business and leave people outside of that business. And when you just think of it, business is nothing more than a shell without the individuals that run it. They bring the dynamism. They bring some of the setbacks sometimes and some of the controversies. And I think if you can harness that and absorb all of that and move in the right direction, you got a pretty good organization, a pretty good shot at having a good organization. So that's what excites me. I think this onset of AI and technology and how we continue to ensure that people can do their very best work, build worth for the organization and for themselves. I think that's a currency that we can't lose sight of. But I think the onset of technology and what the pundits might say about what technology will do to jobs and the prospect of jobs in the future, and then how do you assure people but also motivate and inspire them, I think sets us up for an exciting decade, rest of this decade, and certainly the decade or decades to come.
Yeah, it is interesting to think, what will business look like in 20 years?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe just even in 10 years. And to that extent, what will, HR and talent development look like in that time? I've often thought, as I come at it from kind of a coaching and training kind of perspective, I go back to what are some of the core traits, I think, of employees, things that we, want to cultivate in people, but that employers want to, look for too, or even, that employees, again, can cultivate in themselves so that they don't have to worry about being replaced or displaced. And it comes down to me, something that you said, which is curiosity.
Yeah.
I think a desire to continue learning and knowing and just kind of getting at, like, why do things happen, or why do people, or why can we try it in a different way? But just that openness to curiosity is one of those things that I don't think can be replaced by a machine or by technology. In the same way that, I mean, it is amazing what AI can do in terms of really kind of creating and mimicking that sort of interpersonal feel, but those soft skills of just human to human understanding, active listening, caring, and connection, I think those things aren't replaceable.
Right. You're right. You're exactly right. Missy, I was having a conversation with a colleague of mine in technology, and his team, they do quite a bit of work with Gen AI, and they're still in the early stages, but they're trying to find unique business cases or use cases for it. Mm-hmm. One of the things he said that really struck me, and I've given it a lot of thought in the last 24, 48 hours or so. Generative AI in general, as a subset of technology, is a little like another employee. So it's not a replacement for our existing employees, but it's another employee, an alternative to an employee. Be precise. So we'll still need our employees to engage that quote other employee in a unique way to get the best yield. And if you have a highly curious workforce or employee that can do that and will find unique ways, I think it lifts the overall floor on some of the capabilities. And we're still a long way off. I mean, perhaps that's the beauty of it. A long way off, and perhaps in endless pursuit of what that looks like, which is why I think we should be careful not to make it a black and white or a finite type of an approach, because this will be an evolution. We're just constantly, we're incrementally kind of moving the needle. But I think if you just distill it down to one thing, the subset of technology, which is AI, which is all the rage, is an extension of your workforce. It is another employee that you have to onboard. You have to teach.
Yes.
You have to provide it information. You have to engage it. And I don't want to be silly and make this a scientific or science fiction thing, but if you look at it from that standpoint, I think you have the greatest chance of being successful with AI being in your ecosystem than perhaps if you look at it as doing everything for you and scare of the concern that it could take away.
I love that. I mean, when you're going through sort of the ways that you need to engage with it, I mean, providing it feedback, right? I mean, that's a key part of it. There's a quality control sort of element, and there is this feedback component to help it get better, and ultimately, right, the organization can then get better. So I think that's really powerful, thinking about it as, extension of your workforce.
But if you also kind of think of some of the principles that'll never die. As you said, you need employees that are creative and curious.
Yeah.
You still need employees that are willing to solve problems.
Yes.
And from a baseline standpoint, employees that are willing to solve problems or to be in service of their fellow employee or the customer or perhaps just humanity. And I think it's a unique blend. And part of what we need to foster as people leaders, as HR leaders, as business leaders, I think we need to foster what that right mix needs to be. And I think you need to keep infusing and keep pushing the organization. If there's one aspect of discipline that I think we need, I think it's that, having that unique blend and making sure you push the organization to continue to achieve or pursue that unique blend.
Yep, absolutely. It just makes me think about other, introductions of technology and adoption of technology just in I'd like to say my short lifespan, but it's longer than I want to really admit.
Hey, I don't know about you, but I've been here a while.
I know it's been, yeah. But I just, I remember when websites were first, kind of coming online and working in the communication and marketing field. Of course, it became the answer to any question. Oh, build a website. And then I remember when social media started to come up. The company I worked with before started talking about it as like horizontal influence, this whole kind of peer-to-peer connectivity. But I have to say, maybe I've just always been a little bit old school in my head, because I hear what you're saying, but the principle, and the technology and the ways in which people can connect, and the fact that we can do this globally and instantaneously, amazing. But at its core, you are talking about some very fundamental human to human behaviors, needs, and it goes down to fundamental communication. And so I always kind of be like, everybody wants to talk about this like it's a whole brand new thing, and let's not forget kind of what we know fundamentally, and then figure out how to apply that and that basic understanding with the new tools that are available.
Yeah, the simple I think the simple reference that I often think about is in our world of speed and pace, where keeping in touch with loved ones and friends and the like is still critical. A text message, a WhatsApp group, a text group brings that all together in seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you just freeze frame that and say, okay, what else, how else can I enhance my life through the use of these things so it's integrated, or so I'm blended with it and it's a part of my ecosystem? I think that's when you see some of the true benefits, and you don't really see some of the advancements as fearful, but instead things that can just add richness or can enrich your life. I just I'll never forget, my wife and I were joking about it. We resisted cell phones when they were first sort of en masse. And I look back and I go, how silly were we? I mean, to even think of that. But I think that's the case now. You know, I mean, there's so many different things that we resist because it feels daunting, or we're not sure how it's connected. I think we need to embrace it. I think we need to embrace it for the good that it can do for us.
Yeah.
For the benefits it provides us, loved ones, friends, colleagues.
Absolutely. What was something I was reading the other day? I don't know. There was just some quick reference to just a video call, and I thought, I don't know, it hit me of when that sounded like science fiction, which really was not that long ago. I was like, man, if only I could call somebody and see them too. You know, now we do it, don't even think about it. It's just, I don't know.
Yeah, there's a manufacturer, when they first released these video calls. I mean, the concept was you would have the call and it would feel like the person is right there. And I just remember being wildly fascinated, and it felt like science fiction. When today, I mean, you do that all day long. I mean, if I don't want to only hear my wife's voice, I have the benefit of FaceTime to see my wife's face, you know, and for so many other loved ones or friends that I keep in touch with. But these are mere references that drives the point home that technology is something for us to embrace, to further harness the beauty of humanity and the beauty of connectedness.
Absolutely. Okay, so this is, I'm going to shift a little bit, but stay on the positives, just staying on the positive. One of the things that I hear a lot amongst businesses today, and when it comes to the workforce, is, what do we do with Gen Z? And so I'm just going to tell you sort of my bias on the front end, and I'd love to hear your thought. I tend to look at these things as like, I think it is again pretty typical for older generations to always look at the young whippersnappers and be like, what is up with this generation? I mean, I remember, you know, when millennials first came into the workforce, and it was like, what? They want work-life balance? They want meaning in their jobs? And I'm thinking, what's wrong with that? I mean, I'm kind of like, yes, thank you. You know, I feel like at the heart of it, Gen Xers wanted that too. We just jumped quickly to, well, that's never going to happen. So we're going to slog along, right? So I hear a lot about this. Man, what do we do with this? They just don't want to work. You know, everything from they're lazy to whatever. And I have no hard data to go on here, but my gut just says, let's not sell this generation short. They've got a different take on things. But I wonder from your perspective, what you're seeing and hearing, what's your take on Gen Z in the workforce?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'll tell you, and primarily anecdotally, but I think they bring incredible balance, and they bring incredible balance as their predecessors also brought incredible balance, as we brought incredible balance to the workforce. And I have to believe, because I see it play out, that they push the edges, and that's what gives us some of the expansion that we see in our business. Pushing the edges has forced us to look at work schedules and flex work schedules, gig workers. I mean, you kind of think of, you just look at how the social economy or how the economy in general moves. A lot of it's because they insist on the realm, or sorry, the confines to be broken down. I think honestly, I think if you just let them run with it, sometimes you certainly have to give them a framework.
Right.
But I think if you can provide them with a degree of freedom and you set the intent, then I think they're about like any other generation. They're unique, don't get me wrong. But with respect to the business environment, I think then they're sort of off and away when you look at some of the things they come up with. My challenge, frankly, is how do I ensure that I keep this muscle of embracing it versus a muscle of bridling them? Because I think that's where we see the deficit, or that's where we diminish what could really happen.
I think, yeah, that's beautifully said. I wonder sometimes, just for myself, with my kids being 24 and 22, like I see them entering, work and making this transition from college into work. And what it makes me sensitive to is that of what, again, the mindset that they bring to it, which is not one that I want to crush. It's one you want to flourish, but also that I guess part of my beef is I think that college does not prepare people well for the real world. So I think there's that, like some of it is just remembering how it was when you came out of college and went into a first job.
Right.
And there's just some sort of, just being able to set people up for success. So as you said, providing that framework, providing those expectations. I see some differences in the sense that there seems to be a bit more deference, and there's maybe less comfort in kind of the face-to-face, like, because it's just this sort of thing of, I don't want to bother. I don't want to be a bother. I don't want to take up your time. I don't want to impose. And so I think that's a little bit different, but some of that also just comes from confidence and being in the workforce. So when I hear managers or others say, this generation, or we have a workforce problem, I'm just like, please hold up the mirror, because most often it's a problem of management, right? Like if we are good managers, then we are having the conversations, we're listening, we're providing feedback, we're setting expectations, we're creating a trusted sort of environment. But if we somehow skip that and think that when people walk in, or it's probably all your job, Lars. HR is supposed to onboard everyone to do everything within their first week at the job. And if you do your job right, then everybody else doesn't have to do anything. It's like,
right.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, I think you know this all too well, which is why I think what you're saying is perfect. In coaching, there is assessment and evaluation of your coachee, or as there is for a manager and employee, or manager and subordinate, but it should also be absent of judgment. So I should assess my employees. I should evaluate my employees based on the expectations and certain standards that we agree upon. Excuse me, but I think it should be absent, and this is where it's difficult, absent of judgment. I should be helping my employee or my employees move to a place where they feel like they can stand upright and meet certain expectations, fulfill their goals, pursue their career. But me sort of judging them on the merit of how they are different relative to a point of reference, which is dated, or it's biased, or it's narrow, I don't agree with that, and that's hard. You know, I mean, that's hard. That's how we're wired. As a dad with teenagers, and you with kids in your 20s, you tend to do that because you have expectations of your kids based on your investment in them. But I think to the extent that you can evaluate and assess absent of judgment, I think that becomes a nice mix.
That is powerful. And I'm going to hold on to that and I'm going to steal it and use it.
Please go for it. Go for it.
Assess and evaluate, but without judgment. That's great. That is so true. So Lars, one of the things that strikes me, one of the reasons that, gosh, since the first Zoom meeting we did as part of Leadership Atlanta.
You with the birds in the background. I remember it now. And what do you call them again? You have, for your audience, you have to. Yes. They're not French hens. They're not. I've always wanted to call them French hens.
I know. We had turkey vultures in my parents' backyard.
It was something in November, December. That's why I want to say French hens.
Yeah, I was sitting outside and it's just like, if I am attacked or taken away by these birds, I just want you to know what's going on.
That's why we didn't record it. That's why we didn't record it.
Well, now, so they live in my parents live in Northeast Ohio.
Yeah.
But here in Roswell, just over the past maybe 4 to 6 weeks, we've had all these crows in the front yard. Now, let me just tell you, that's unnerving as well.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. For every myth and you know, and everything we've ever heard about crows. Yeah. And it's so obscure when they make landfall, right? I mean, they just hang around and they're obnoxious. They just stand there and they look at you.
Yeah, they're like, I'm not in your yard, you are in my yard. What are you doing here? And then the fact that a group of them is called a murder is not comforting either. So when I say there's a murder in my front yard, anyway, okay. But birds aside, what I was going to say is, A, I love your sense of humor. And B, you are just somebody that exudes warmth and positivity.
Thank you.
And I got to really see it on display when we came together for our Leadership Atlanta, events, everything from the opening retreat to just each of the program days, because everyone fell in love with you. So I want to, why is that? No, that's not my question.
There are parties that would beg to differ, I can assure you. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we won't go into all of the those things stay at the retreat. Yeah. But no, in all seriousness, what are the things that inspire you? What kind of people, music, what helps fuel you and your positivity?
Well, I've always considered myself a non-expert in spirituality, but it's something I believe in. I really believe there's a higher power, in my case, God, that if we lock in, very good things will happen, because it has always been the case that good things happen when you have Him at the center, number one. Number two, I always try to ground myself every day. I just think there's so much calamity in the world that you have to have a central force that grounds you. And I think that makes you adaptable, attractive. That also helps you with positivity, and it helps you to get over yourself sometimes, particularly in my case where I may be given feedback that, hey, you weren't so positive as it relates to this. I can stop and go, I need to take a look at that, because that's not the image or the projection that I want to have. Mm-hmm. I think the other thing too is, Missy, I have this inner belief and motivation to help the very next person be the very best they can. That is at my core, where it's not rags to riches necessarily, although those stories are pretty compelling for me. It's what can I do to help this person out? can I, and sometimes over-index on it, where I become too, I overuse, the line of advice, or trying to assist someone where they really don't need assistance. But I just believe that you should always be willing to help the next person get to the next station that they want to achieve. And that just motivates me. I'll give a plug. My kids' high school, they play in their first basketball championship tonight. This is the first ever. Like those sort of stories just go, wow. And when I think of the coach that toiled year after year to try to bring his team to some level of greatness, and here they are on the cusp of it, and whether they win tonight or not, they're still great. That's those human pursuits and this human drama of someone being better than they were the day before and better than they are today, that they hope to achieve tomorrow. That stuff just moves me. And maybe that ultimately is why I love talent and people, because I just think we're put on this earth to be just a bit better. And we all have this talent, this capability, that it requires discovery. But once you believe you're within a sniff of what that is, then you can be remarkably different today than you were the previous day. And it's just fascinating to me. So I would say those are the things that move me. And at the end of the day, I'm just incredibly fortunate. I'm incredibly fortunate. I had a good friend that passed away several years ago, and he would always talk about living out the American dream. I grew up in the Bahamas. He's like, how fortunate are we to move from one country to another one and to have this remarkable lifestyle that we get to create, and whatever lifestyle means. You don't have to have a lifestyle like someone else's. If you can live out on some of your promises and some of your beliefs, and some of your values, I think that's lifestyle. So that's really it. That's really
powerful. Where would you say, can you point to an experience or people in your lives that you feel like have really shaped that kind of perspective for you? Who's been, formative in that?
Yeah, there's several people. One, I had, I mentioned my grandfather. My grandfather was the epitome of consistency. I mean, he was just consistent about consistency. It's amazing. It's fascinating. He had a group of employees that every day he would pick up to open his restaurant at 3:45 a.m. because they did breakfast all the way through dinner. And he picked them up. And I'll never forget, he said, I have to pick them up because they're my employees, and I'm asking them to do my work. And that's how consistent he was. And it was every day. I rarely remember a time he took ill. He was very routine oriented. Every little thing, just I think he had a consistent outfit, depending on the day. Just very consistent. My mother's always been a strong advocate of the same thing, but she's also very dogmatic and very strong-willed. So she's played a huge role. I've had one or two mentors along the way. And I would say my wife and my kids. My wife does a tremendous job of understanding the other person, and the sheer willingness of being able to put herself last in service of the other individual. And she does it remarkably well with our kids. And I think my kids, for being so committed to who they are, and no, they don't have to show that off to the rest of the world, but internal to our home, they are perfectly fine being who they are. And we try to embrace that as much as possible. Where I said earlier, my kids have really shown a light on the importance of me developing as they've developed. This is not dad sort of being flatlined when it comes to development or developing as a father, but instead developing in the sake of me growing with them. So I would say that's it. Leadership Atlanta has been a big part of. I have the pleasure of knowing friends like you, where I look at some of the things you guys do, some of the risk you've taken, some of the courage that you display in service of other people, in service of great professional pursuits, and I just go, wow. I mean, what an honor, what a privilege to get a chance to be around that, because you know what? Eventually, it pushes me beyond some of my boundaries, and I love it. I mean, I absolutely love it. I don't always think of it this way, but I have to think so. I do believe I'm living out a dream. I never thought I would be where I am. I never thought it, and I would say that is a statement of grounding, not a statement of fascination, because I also recognize too, I'm also in need of constant development, constant learning, constant humility. But I do believe I'm living out a dream.
I love that. It just reminded me too that I actually quote you, although I don't think I've given you the forcing the citation. But on my LinkedIn page, you said at a seminar that you strive to be a learn-it-all. And maybe you read that from somebody else. I don't know, but I love that. It's this, I'm not a know-it-all. I don't desire to be a know-it-all, but a learn-it-all.
Yeah, and I don't take the credit. That's actually oh my goodness, which book was that out of? I don't know it all, I learn it all. Oh my goodness, it's not Simon Sinek, but there's a fairly famous author that came up with the statement.
Well, for now, it's a Lars Minns statement. That's what we're going to go for.
I think it was Charles Johnson. He wrote the book Why We Innovate. Something is the title of his book is something along the lines of maybe it wasn't Charles Johnson, but there was an author that said, I don't want to be a know-it-all, I want to be a learn-it-all.
I love that. Again, it goes back to a number of themes that you've been talking about, being open to being curious, continuously learning and developing, and how that is both a grounding piece, but it's also aspirational, right? Yeah. And it is, I think, rooted, at least, for me too, it's rooted in a hope, in a belief in something bigger than me, in God. And so that striving never to think too highly of myself. But that also means not thinking too low of myself, either. And I think that when you can see that in your children as well, when they can feel comfortable with who they are, and look, we all go through the discomfort of that too. So it's not like a static moment, but like knowing that you can just fully lean into that and grow into that is such a powerful gift. Such a powerful gift.
Yeah. The beauty of life, I honestly believe this, having had a few loved ones pass on, and I've had the pleasure of listening to stories that people have told, or the appreciation that's been expressed. We're living something out we'll never be able to watch in replay. Yeah. We will never be able to watch it. And so it would be short-sighted to not live it at its maximum and live it well. Mm-hmm. Learning, reading, adapting, growing, being humble, being expressive when you have the chance, being apologetic, asking for forgiveness. I mean, I think you need to roll all of those things into this life, because someone else is watching, and someone else will replay, the tapes at some point. We just want to have that benefit. Mm-hmm. So maybe the solemn service that we give to the people around us is just that, to be fully prepared to give them the best of us by trying to live in the best way. And I just think life's fascinating. It's just fascinating.
That is really powerful. Okay, as we close, I could just occupy all of your time for the rest of the week.
We need turkey vultures. Only turkey vultures. I will only commit to a longer session I should.
Okay. Next time I'm up in Ohio, I will call you and then we'll keep on with the turkey vultures. But in the meantime,
I have this crazy cartoon right now, the vultures and I can see it. Vultures versus the crows. I can see that.
this is going to be the takeaway from this interview, the turkey vulture interview. No. Okay. As we close, do you have a song that is an inspiration to you or kind of your power song?
Yes, I do. I do have several, but the one that is most emblematic of my life and how I look at life is Desiree's song. It was written in the 70s, I think, called "You Gotta Be." British pop star wrote the song. You gotta be bold, you gotta be bad, you gotta be wiser. I mean, just that song is it. That song is it. And I always loved the hook of the song until I really started paying attention to the lyrics. And at the end of the day, the lyrics are, you've got to push yourself to pursue these things. You don't necessarily have to always be those things, but it's it's an urgency that I absolutely love, which is what I think we're chasing every day. A mark of urgency.
That is amazing. Awesome. Thank you, Lars. I thank you so much for your time, so much for your insights, and look forward to seeing you in person without turkey vultures, though. Okay.
Thank you very much, Missy. It was a pleasure.
All right. Take care. We'll talk soon.
Take care.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Good. Good.